Hey guys, spring is upon us and I wanted to show my rooting method using these storage bins. These are about 17 inches tall and they'll allow me to use these 4x9 tree pods as well as these 3x8s without any issues. As you can see here, I get plenty of clearance because once the trees start to grow, you make sure you have enough ample space. So they'll be able to fit the 4x9 pods, the 3x8s, or even these little grow bags as well. Before I get started, I like to soak my cuttings. First and foremost, you want to clean them. I generally just use dish soap and water and just a toothbrush. And after I clean them and allow them to air dry, I place them in a little solo cup full of water, about a third of the way, and I place them somewhere dark. And you want to make sure it's somewhere dark and room temperature. You don't want it too hot, you don't want it cold. And the tops, I seal them with some wood glue. You can use paraffin like you see there. What you want to aim for is you want to let them soak until you start seeing these raised bumps. That lets you know that there's some oxygen exchange and these will wind up being roots. So that's a very good sign. You want to start planting them once they start getting to about this stage right here. Sometimes you'll get some roots that do pop out, and you want to make sure that you put them in the tree pots well before they get longer than about a quarter of an inch, half an inch, because at that point they start to break off. But this is just perfect. If I put this in some soil, some medium, they'll start rooting. So anyhow, you want to kind of prepare yourself that's about a 1 to 2 week window of time there. What I've done here, I've gotten a box cutter and I cut out the perimeter, leaving a lip. The reason I leave a lip is so that I can use some of this netting. It's called no-seam netting. You can find it on Amazon, different brands. I went with this one. I used a different one last year, but this is just the perfect size. It turns out that it's the exact same length that I'm going to need for this project. So if I lay this out, you'll be able to see that I can just cut this in half. And I'll be able to use it for both bins, see? So I'll cut that in half, and then I'm just gonna use a hot glue gun and glue it around the perimeter. And that's gonna help me create a barrier between any unseen gnats that will cause issues for my rooted cuttings. In order to get a better fit, I actually went on the outside of the lip, on the lip itself rather, instead of the indentation. I think that would have been a little bit harder to get a tight seal. So also I set little tacks, one here, one there. As I pull the fabric, I'll start another one, and then that's what helps you get a nice tight seal on the top to work with. So now I don't have to struggle with the hot glue gun. So make yourself a couple of tacks there on each little corner, and then you'll get a nice and tight fitting. And then from here I can go underneath and start gluing. And I have it set on the lowest setting, so if I do set the hot glue, I can actually set it down with my finger without burning myself. So I'll demonstrate that here. Give it a nice pull. And then I can push it down with my fingers without burning myself. You could also use like a popsicle stick or something. So I'll do that all around the perimeter, and then any of the excess film, we'll just cut it off. Here we have a straight line. It's a bit messy, but I have no empty spots, and I found that if you actually run the hot glue gun over the fabric, it'll actually stick a lot better. So we learn as we try different things. So here we go. So I'm still going to push down on it to ensure that it gets through the little seams. And that's pretty snug if I pull at it. So we'll just keep going all the way around. And here's our finished product. It's not the prettiest thing, but it is definitely sturdy and tight, so that's good. You also want to be cautious with the storage bins. They tend to have these holes on the sides of the bins. I think that's for ventilation purposes, but I went ahead and added some glue to prevent any gnats from coming in, which is basically our goal. It's very pretty from this side. You know, if I had put the net on the underside, it would look a lot nicer, but just the way that this lip is raised, it wasn't gonna work. But I'm not doing it for fashion or for looks. It's gonna do its thing. And for comparison, this is one that I built last year, and it did a great job. The only issue was the height difference. As you can see here, it's a lot shorter. So once I started getting the buds to break out, the leafing, the tops of the trees were hitting the top of this bin. But by then, it was time to move them out anyway. So it wasn't that big of an issue. And as you can see, this is holding up very well. In fact, I left this out all the whole season, spring, summer, fall, even winter. I just brought this in and I rinsed it off. As you can see, the screen is still in really good shape. So I'm going to start with the soil. The medium actually that I'll be using is a HP Pro Mix. You can use any medium that you like. Anything that has cocoa coir and perlite is perfect. You want to make sure it has more perlite, and that will help with a lot of the aeration and prevent the medium from getting too soggy, too wet, retaining too much moisture. Also helps with the root aeration. Now, I like to keep my medium inside of a big bag and sealed up. If you leave this open and exposed, you're exposing yourself to gnats. So don't be lazy. Get you a container, get you a big bag, something. If you're not using the soil, cover it up. It's very important, because you may not think, but as we're speaking here, gnats could be flying in here, laying eggs. And gnats aren't a big issue everywhere. They are in in Texas, they're definitely an issue. Anywhere where it's humid. Some people say it's overkill to not worry about gnats, but hey, this is our investment. So I'm just gonna fill this guy up with soil, and I'm gonna be soaking this medium with water with the even spray. There's no exact science behind it, how much to fill, because I don't even know how much soil I've added, but it's okay. You want to make sure you add enough so that the medium can absorb it, and then later on we will squeeze out any excess. So don't worry, just get the medium wet. I've sprayed down the medium, and what I'm going to do is just close the lid and allow it to absorb. In time, everything should spread out evenly. Then I'll go in by hand and mix it around. While we allow the medium to absorb the water moisture, I'm going to pull all of my cuttings I've been allowing to sit in water. I like to place them somewhere dark and cool. This time around I put them up here, and unfortunately they got a little bit more of light penetration than I expected, as you can see here with the growth. Generally you want something that doesn't have as much growth, something like this. It'll give you better results because it'll concentrate its energy on the roots versus on top growth. But I am confident these guys will make it. The reason that we soak them in water is so that we can get some of these bumps here that will eventually turn into roots. It's like a prep. I like to prep these guys before rooting them. So it's time to pull them out, give them a quick little rinse, and prep them with a little bit of Clonex so we can move on to the next step. So we're gathering our items so we can prepare. Here I have these grow bags that I'll be using. I opted out of using the tree pots this year. I normally use 4x9 tree pots or even 3x8s. They were just going to take too long to be delivered, so I opted for these grow bags. I believe they'll do the trick. And these were 11 inches by almost 4. And I folded them down. I don't need them to be as tall. And once the soil is in there, they should sit squarely. So I'll be able to utilize those. And I have a couple of plates, one for the cutting since I've had them in water. I'll just take it out, set it there so that any of the excess moisture can run off. And I have a paintbrush here as well. so that we can use our rooting hormone. The brand doesn't matter. I like to use this gel. It's really convenient. And you always want to pour as much as you'll be using into a container. You don't want to dip into the same container, because if your cuttings have any pathogens, you'll be introducing that to your rooting hormone. You definitely don't want that. So fill as much as you're going to use. Here I have enough to be able to dabble onto the cutting, and here I have another plate so I can use to prepare my pot. So anyhow, what I'll do here is just kind of wipe this down a bit. I'm not scared to wipe off any of these little bumps. These aren't actual roots, so it'll be perfectly fine. But I want to make sure that they're dry enough so that I can apply the rooting hormone. And what you'll do is just grab your paintbrush and dab some of it on there, and you're literally just going to paint underneath the nodes that you want to produce roots. So I'll go over it here and on each side. We'll dabble that on, and we'll wait a couple minutes so it can dry on. So as you can see here, this has been applied thoroughly, one full layer. You can go the extra route and add another layer. I'm going to opt out of doing that. I'm just going to leave it as is. And many people will tell you that rooting hormone isn't necessary, and it's somewhat true. I feel that it helps encourage rooting, but you can root these guys even without it. So if you don't have any rooting hormone, don't let it bum you out. Try to root regardless. I think the water soaking method is key, as you can see here. I'm even getting some scarring there, which is good. It's callousing up. Usually the roots will appear from there. So this kind of gives you an idea. So again, rooting hormone, optional. If you have it, use it. Don't have it, don't stress. Now, if you come across one of your cuttings that have been soaking in water, you'll see that they may have started to develop some roots. So you want to be very careful when you're applying the rooting hormone. You don't want to disturb those roots. If you knock some off, it'll be totally fine. It's demonstrated that it's already starting to root. But if you can, you want to try to salvage them as best you can. So I won't be applying any there, just around the surrounding areas to be safe. Even on the bottom, you always want to apply some on the bottom. Roots can sometimes come from here as well. But yes, I'll just be leaving that alone. I will not be applying any rooting hormone there. While I was letting these guys soak up the rooting hormone, I started prepping some of the bags, so you take advantage of the time. So now I'll start filling these up with soil and placing our cuttings inside. So I've had the medium in here for maybe about 15 minutes, and every 5 minutes or so I've moved it around, dug deep to make sure I get any of the pockets that are dry, right? And we just want to mix it by hand. I've been doing this 3 times within the last 15 minutes. Now, I poured a little bit more water because even though everything was being absorbed, it was still not the consistency that I wanted. And I found that if you push down after mixing it a few times, push down really hard all over, compact it very well, close it. After about 5 minutes, everything is completely saturated. It's just perfect. So we'll go back in and stir it up all the way to the bottom, just bringing out all the stuff from the bottom over to the top and just cycling it over. So now we'll test the consistency that we're looking for here. Grab a handful of the loose dirt, give it a good squeeze. If you see any water that's dripping, that's the excess moisture. I don't see any coming out. And if you let go, you'll see that you have a clump. That's exactly what we're looking for. It's not too wet and it's not too dry. It's able to hold its form. This is perfect. It's moist, but it's not overly saturated. So as I'll be filling up these bags, I'll give it a good squeeze, make sure I don't have anything dripping out, and then I'll just pour it inside of the pot. That will help ensure that the soil, the medium, is not too wet. What I've done here is I've put the plate on top of the medium and the bag on top to prevent myself from making a big mess and getting yelled at. So I'll continue to just grab a handful and drop it inside of the pot and just continue until we fill it up all the way. And there it's filled to the top. We'll give it a gentle tap. Don't want to push down on it too hard, but want to get rid of any little air pockets, and also make sure that your cutting remains stable. We'll grab one of our cuttings and make sure we don't have any with roots. We'll handle those a little differently, but then we're just gonna ease that guy on down. And I'm going about not all the way to the bottom. I've learned that if you put your cutting all the way at the bottom, it can cause some rot. So I have it to maybe about here. You can also go halfway, but that's about good. And we are going to pat this guy down to make sure that the cutting doesn't wiggle around, and leave myself enough space so that if I do decide to water from the top, it doesn't overflow and I don't lose a bunch of soil. But here I'm going to fill up just a bit more. I'm more than likely going to be bottom watering with these guys, but I love the idea of these fabric bags, because if you do overwater, this stuff will just come right out. It's very breathable. So there we have it. This is our first cutting that we'll be rooting. We're going to place it inside of the bin like so. Make sure it's nice and sturdy, and we'll just line up the rest. And something I do want to add is that you want to make sure that you label your cuttings. Here I'm using a grow bag. I cannot write on the grow bag. I don't want to use tags, so I write on the cutting itself. I use an acrylic Posca marker. They work very well. And lastly, while you're prepping the rest, grab your lid, your customized lid, and cover your bin. You don't want any gnats flying around trying to lay their eggs while you're going to work. And also be mindful of this. Don't walk away. If you're walking away, close the lid, and that's going to help you in the long run. Now, when you have one of these cuttings with the roots, and you obviously just don't want to put it into the dirt after you filled it, instead, you're going to fill it about 1/3 of the way, and you're going to place the cutting right in the center. Careful not to push down and lose any of those roots. And as right now I'm holding the camera, so it's a little bit hard to show, but while you're holding it centered, you're just going to grab some soil, some medium, by hand, and gently just sprinkle it in until you have it covered. And that's going to help you to not break those roots and keep it centered. And here I've done that, and now I'm just, again, gently just placing some medium around the cutting. And on this one, I'm going to be gentle when I pat down. Again, the other one I've patted down gently as well, but even more here because, again, we have some roots and we do not want to disturb that. So yes, you see I'm very gently patting it down by my thumb so that the cutting does not move around. And there we have the finished product. They're all tucked inside. I was able to fit 18 total. They wind up looking more like 1-gallon pots, which I'm totally fine with. And now we're going to cover up the bin with the lid, like so. Make sure we have a snug fit. If you don't have a snug fit, you can get some clips from the big box store and just make sure that you clip them along there. But that should be totally fine. And now we'll find a nice warm spot for them. I've opted to use this sunroom. Not everyone has a sunroom, I understand, but for me this will work the best for this situation because I already have some leafing. The buds have broken. They need light. So if you get the same situation where your buds are breaking, you need to give them light, no matter if you have roots or not. Here I've dated it, March 13th, 2025, so I know when I've set these. That way I can get a good idea of when they'll start rooting. I'm going to monitor them. Since we have this fabric, they'll be able to breathe. They'll evaporate. If I need to water them, I'll probably add some water at the bottom, let them absorb the water. versus feeding from the top. And I would recommend finding a location that if you're going to go outside, this will definitely work. It's definitely not an issue. If your temperatures are anywhere from the 60s to the 80s, totally fine. Make sure that you do leave them where there is indirect sun. A wall that faces the north is perfect. Under a tree that is well shaded, you want to make sure they don't get any direct sunlight or they will get cooked. Very important. In here, since I'm putting them in the sunroom, I'll be using this thermostat. Tells me also the amount of humidity I have in here. I have some of my plants that I've been storing over the winter, and it's a bit of a mess in here, so forgive me. But anyhow, I'll keep an eye on the temperatures. If it gets too cold in here, I'll be able to move them indoors and vice versa. So 82 degrees currently in the sunroom, totally fine. Make sure they don't get over 90 degrees. 60s to 80s, the 70s being the sweet spot. So we'll come back and we'll check up on these guys. Wish me luck. So it's been about 10 days since I put these guys in here. The top of the soil looks a little dry, but if I move it around, you can see that it's still moist. But I do like to come in with the water bottle and mist at least once a day, and just ensure that we get enough humidity built up inside so the cuttings don't dry out. And then we'll just close it back up, making sure we have a good seal. We look here, we have 66% humidity and 75 degrees temperature. So this is perfect for rooting. It's been 2 weeks since we set these, and I am now seeing roots on a couple of these. Here is Tia Pena, and we have some very strong roots coming out of that bottom. Look at that. I'm really liking these grow bags, and yeah, these are strong roots. So I really haven't been doing much except coming and spraying them. You know, I have the urge to want to water them down, but if you put your finger in, you can feel the medium is still moist. It's not saturated. And I keep saying that, but it's very important that you do not overwater these. You want the roots to seek out the moisture. So here you're seeing a lot of roots as well. This is on LSU Huye. So the surrounding ones haven't shown any roots yet. Here's a couple more from this batch. We have De La Reina, which interestingly enough is poking roots from the top. So the humidity is just right. I'm actually just going to cover that up with soil and then put it right back in its bin. I don't have any surrounding at the bottom or anything like that, but the Smith, this Smith is really, it was a really thick cutting. I'm getting a lot of bud break as well as really strong roots all the way around. Some are poking up at the middle of the bag all the way to the bottom. So the thicker cuttings seem to love these grow bags. It must be the perfect humidity for them. And then here we have a black mission that I'm growing from my dad. He's really wanted a black mission. So again, another really thick cutting. I have a lot of bud break as well, and one really strong root there. Still a bit ways to go. It's been 2 weeks, but it shows that this process works very well. I'm not getting any gnat penetration because of the nets. I try to keep opening them, you know, at a minimum. And I'm just leaving these out for demonstrational purposes. These already have a root set. So if I were to get any gnats that come in and set their eggs in there, by the time that the larva starts coming out, the root system will be fairly strong, so it can overcome that issue. So I'm not really worried about having these out to show you guys, you know. And as I mentioned, I like to get my little water bottle, and I just spritz the top of the cutting, like so. A little bit on the top layer of soil as well, just to give them enough humidity while I leave them inside of the bin. And whenever I do open up the bin to spray it down, I get the lid and I fan it to make sure that if any gnats are in there, they'll hopefully just fly out, with the disturbance of the air. And here in this bin, we have two that I know of that already have roots. We have this Parajalrimata. There's a really thick root coming in. Again, these guys are only 2 weeks in, and I don't expect much in 2 weeks, but just to see that, it's definitely a strong root system. Here we have a San Francois, and fairly new variety. And yes, we have some roots as well. So I'm getting some top growth there. And we're just going to continue misting these, just keeping a happy environment. Since I do have some top growth, some buds that have broken, both from the root treatment in the water and from just sitting in here, I am going to allow sunlight to hit them. I'm not worried about, any issues with the roots, getting any of the light. You want to avoid that generally, but since I already have some top growth, I need to give it some kind of lighting. So here I just have indirect light. Now this process works very, very well depending on the temperature outside. So if you have anything that's in the 60s to 70s, it's perfect. If you're in the 80s, then you want to kind of stay somewhere shaded, somewhere north facing wall outside. But indirect sunlight, but that temperature would just be key, is the 70s. In here, we are holding 73°F, 72% humidity. That's just perfect. That's just perfect. So definitely recommend this for any of you that are starting to root a little bit later in the season. I generally don't start this bin process till about March or April, and this is just the perfect time to get this going. If you were to do this in the winter, which a lot of people are eager, they like to start rooting in December, January, February, you can do so, but you're just going to want to use heat mats. And keeping the heat mats anywhere from 77 to 79 degrees is perfect as well. So definitely a good new process. I say new just because of the lids that I incorporated here. Feel free to borrow, steal, and just give credit due. It's been exactly 1 month and we have an update, guys. We are at 46% humidity, 78°F, and we have roots. I moved some of the center ones that were struggling a bit over to this side, to this bin, and these guys are doing great over there, showing some roots and some top growth, but these are the most impressive. This De La Reina, as you can see, is just exploding with roots. Look at that. Roots are poking out of the side of the bag. This process definitely works. And this is the first one that we tried to root, the San Francois. So you can definitely see before and after results. This definitely works. As well as this Smith is just poking out. It's almost ready to come out of the bin. We're gonna have to up pot these guys to either a 2-3 gallon, might even get away with a 1 gallon. But the good thing with these fabric bags is that the roots can grow through the bag, and after time they will biodegrade. They'll break down. This is a very great process for March, April, May. As long as your weather is under the 80-degree marker, it's perfect. As I mentioned earlier, you can do it during the winter. Of course, you want to incorporate the heat mats, but I wanted to provide you guys actual results with this new process. Thank you guys for watching.